Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Lead with Giants TV. I am here tonight with Barry Banther, the author of A Leader's Gifts. He's going to join us this evening to talk about his amazing, inspiring leadership book. So, Barry, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tal. Liz, I'm excited about this, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and all your community.
Excellent, excellent. We'll go around the room. We'll let everybody introduce themselves shortly. Here I am. My name is Tal Schnell. I'm the producer and host of the Lead with Giants TV. I'm excited to have another session here about personal growth. We have some amazing guests with us. And Barry, welcome again. So let's start with Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz Stinselli with Stinselli Advisors, and I'm joining you tonight from Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm really excited to be here with both of you.
Great, great. Glad you can join us. Barry, I'm really inspired. I've been sitting around and reading your book in the last few days. Just so everybody knows, you've been part of a self-transformation, leadership transformation in your own life, and you share that in the book. Talk to us about what that personal transformation you went through. It's just an amazing story.
Well, Tal, thank you. As a young boy, I remember thinking, as I observed work and how people worked, I really wanted to be a leader. I had this desire, and I demonstrated that desire when I was in high school and even in college, and was involved as a leader in activities, and was very fortunate early in my life, in my teenage years, to get a job working in a radio station in a broadcasting facility, and very quickly learned the broadcasting business. And by the time I went to college, I already had several years of practical full-time experience in broadcasting, and in college was able to continue that and expand that. And shortly after I got out of college, I had the opportunity at a very young age, I was just barely 23, when I went to Baltimore, Maryland, to manage a major market radio property for a company that was located off the coast of on the west coast, or rather the east coast of Florida was their headquarters, but they had stations throughout the country. So I was one of the youngest major market managers in the country. I knew a lot about my craft. I knew a lot about the technique. I knew how to draw an audience and do those things. But Tal, what I didn't know was how to lead people. And so the first part of the book tells my story. I was able to achieve pretty quickly financial success. We changed the format, changed some of the programming, built the listening audience, and had financial success. And I misunderstood that financial success doesn't equate to leadership. Because if you don't make an investment in the people you're leading, if they don't really become important to you, then your financial success is not going to have much legs to it, and your leadership's not going to have anything that gives it lasting power. But just in the nick of time, with only being at the station a year, I'm promoted. And I'm promoted from not only managing that station in Baltimore, but now I'm managing stations in Baltimore, Cincinnati, and a new acquisition we had in Toledo. And shortly after that, I'm promoted to the executive vice president seat in the company. Still haven't reached my 26th birthday, and I'm responsible for stations in Baltimore, Cincinnati, Toledo, Los Angeles. And shortly after that, we added a facility in Tampa, Florida. And so my promotion masked the fact that I really wasn't a very good leader. I wasn't developing a team of people that would follow me. Every leader who lasts longer than just a few years has to create followers who believe in their leadership, who believe in their vision, who sense that they can partner with that leader. I hadn't done any of that. So then I relocate from Baltimore to our new 50,000-watt powerhouse in Tampa, Florida. And one day, my secretary passed my desk, and she dropped a letter on my desk. I noticed the return address, and it was from the Baltimore facility. I thought nothing about it. But when I opened it up, it was only one page, but it was a page that would ultimately be the foundation in changing my whole life. Because in that letter, one of my employees, even a couple of people that weren't employees but who knew me, they'd gotten together and written a letter. And in the letter, they commended me for the success I had. They recognized that I'd been able to quickly build the organization and build the network. But then they were very clear to me that they did not want to work for me anymore in the future. They didn't want to partner with me in any more endeavors because I wasn't giving them any attention. I was taking advantage of them, all for the cause of building the business, all for what I thought was appropriate to the bottom line, but they really called me out on it. Now, as I look back on it all these decades later, Tal, I can recognize that I had a choice. One choice would have been to have ignored it and said, look, that's sour grapes just because I'm getting promoted and I'm running the company, but thankfully, I'm grateful I didn't do that. Now, it stung and it hurt for a moment, and I thought about it for a lot of days, but I realized I was at one of those moments in my life that I had to decide which direction I was going to go. So I made a decision. I'm going to listen to what they've said to me. I'm going to sort of take a personal inventory of where I am. And I began to ask myself, how do you become the kind of leader that doesn't get those kind of letters? How do you become the kind of leader that people will follow with enthusiasm? And here's the first lesson I learned. Leadership isn't something you do. It's someone you become. And that began my journey then of not being a boss, because anybody can be appointed a boss, but you have to earn the right to be followed as a leader.
It's an inspiring story, and tell us, at that moment there was also another transition to that, because you decided to resign from the job and the promotion and everything else. That you build your career, you've reached the top of the mountain there, but then you decided to resign. What made you do that?
Well, at the same time that I was very involved in running the network, I'd also begun to be interested in a local college, a small Christian college that was located in the Tampa Bay area. I'd met the founder and the president of the school. He'd invited me to teach some evening communication classes. That appealed to me. My wife and I thought that would be a good idea. And so internally, I began to recognize that part of becoming a leader had a lot more to do than just the spreadsheets and the profit and loss statement and the revenue and the expense statement and how you're putting everything together. It had to do with people. And so I had an opportunity to make a decision, and the decision I made was to meet with my owner. And even though I had a percentage of the business and I would have to give that up, I made the decision, I'm going to resign. I'm going to step out of this career that really was envied by a lot of people who wanted that sort of opportunity so young, and I'm going to take another direction and try to learn, what does it mean to really invest in people? What does it mean to lead people? I want people who will willingly follow my leadership. And so I began teaching at the college and working in the college in administration. And because the college was committed to spiritual truth, it was a real challenge to me personally, that even though I was a person of faith, I recognized I'm not living these principles out at work every day. And so over the course of several months and several semesters of teaching, I began to discover that there's some qualities that actually are gifts that we'll talk about a little bit later. Yes. That lasting leaders nurture these gifts. They take these gifts and develop them in themselves, and then they freely give them away to other people. Now, I thought that I would remain at the college for just a few years in this transition and learn how to be a leader and change. What actually happened, though, I quickly was asked to serve as an assistant to the president of the college, a new president, because the founder of the college had died. And within just a few years, I actually became the president of the college and had the opportunity to relocate it on a new 40-acre campus, seek its renewed accreditation. And I was able to practice the leadership skills I didn't have before. Now, I still faced some of the giants in my life that I had to overcome, and sometimes I would take a step forward and a couple of steps back. But over the course of those years at the college, I began to really understand what it means to be a lasting leader and to become the kind of leader that other people will enthusiastically follow. And that's when my transition began to take full hold in my life and turn me in a different path.
It's just an amazing. Let me give you the opportunity for our panel also to participate as well.
Barry, can you talk just a little bit about how, as leaders, we can create an environment that really values and encourages the human potential side of the organization?
Sure, and Liz, the mistake I made, which is very important to point out, as a very young man, I made the mistake that environment or that culture would follow everything else. That the number one thing is to hit the bottom line. The number one thing is to achieve your growth and your sales numbers. Do all of that, then you'll pay attention to the cultural part of it. Now, all these decades later, I realize culture trumps everything. Look at any business that was a flash in the pan. Look at any business that quickly rose to financial success and then it crumbled. Almost without exception, the environment you're talking about wasn't there. And so what I learned in my transition, which took well over a decade, and I've tried to, in the book, condense that down into something that someone can read in a few days and hopefully move much quicker than I did in their own personal transition and begin their own personal transformation. It begins by recognizing that the team I build around me will ultimately determine whether or not we're successful. And so you have to ask yourself, what kind of environment does my team need? And as I asked that question, and I began to really research that and began to be involved in training and leading and helping other business people discover that, I started seeing these common patterns. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit when we talk about the gifts. There are 5 things that I found that lasting leaders, those who could build a business, take it through a transition, take it through an up curve and a down curve, an up business cycle, a down business cycle, these 5 gifts begin to be prominent. They may not always be verbalized the same way I have in the book, but they're there. You begin to see them. So it begins with a leader recognizing my success in building an environment where others will thrive depends on my willingness to invest in those people. I've been fortunate now to be the lead consultant on over 400 engagements helping companies develop their leadership teams. Liz, I've never found a team that rose above their leader, where they had a leader who was performing poorly, wasn't investing in them, wasn't earning the right to be followed, but somehow the team was outperforming that leader. But I have hundreds of times encountered leaders who actually were suppressing the performance of their team because they weren't paying attention to the environment and thought that the bottom line and the immediate growth cycle was all that was important. So it takes the leader recognizing environment is everything, culture trumps everything, and then the leader knowing how, knowing what are those things the leader has to do to build people that will in turn build their business.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
That's great. Well, this is a great segue to the 5 gifts, so we'll tackle that in our second segment. So thank you, Barry, for the first segment of your wisdom, and maybe we can dive into it in our second segment. And what strikes me in listening to you is that you had self-awareness of where you are and took that self-awareness and capitalized on that. So let's talk about it on our second segment. I will go ahead and close here.
Thank you.
Okay.